Hey guys, let's talk about chalk pastels. You commonly see them in the art store listed as artist pastels. This is one of my favorite brands. As you can see, I've had this box for a while. So this is Sargent brand. You don't have to have this brand, that's just a brand I'm happy to show you. So, chalk pastels, they always have this little padded foam piece in there because you want to try to make sure the chalk doesn't get broken. So these pastels look like this. Again, you can see I've had these for a while. Chalk pastels are a lot like sidewalk chalk, very similar sort of texture to it, very chalky, but the colors are so much more vibrant. If you ever saw someone do a professional sidewalk chalk drawing, this is the type of stuff that they used. So let's practice these a little bit, and I'll show you what they look like. So when you use chalk pastels, they act a lot like that chalk. Now, if you notice, depending on the type of paper you have, you're going to get a lot of this texture showing up, which can be good, but you might not want it. What I like to do is I like to just use my finger. You will get very messy with chalk pastels, but you can go over them and blend your colors a little bit. These type of pastels are very soft because they do get blended so much. Then there's also a lot of mess and a lot of cleanup with it. You also got to be careful because they can smudge. If you accidentally touch your paper, you can get these weird, horrible smudges that you don't want. So that's something you gotta really keep in mind when you're using chalk pastels. But you can also blend them really nicely. Now you notice we get a lot of this little dust showing up, which can be useful when it comes to blending, but it definitely becomes a pain. So let me just show you some blend of colors here. Let's do some warm colors. I could put them next to each other. I could even put them on top of each other. But I can just take my finger and kind of go over them back and forth, and I can get a really nice blend with this type of pastel. Now I'd want to be careful. I wouldn't want to take my red finger and take it back over the yellow because that would make a dirty mark. So you got to be careful with that sort of thing. So you could use blending stumps with pastels, so those rolled papers that you see a lot with pencil drawings. You would just want to make sure you have a separate one than what you'd use for pencil, and I'd honestly advise having 2 or 3, and you assign certain colors to it. Because I wouldn't want to use the same one on yellow that I did in red, because then the colors would start to smear. Now, you got all this chalk dust afterwards you got to pay attention to. Now, you could just blow it off, but then it's going to blow somewhere. It's going to make a mess. You could also use a paintbrush, and you can use that to blend. You can use it to get really light values, or sometimes even just to kind of brush it off. So, but as you can see, if you look really closely down in here, the colors smear. So you really got to be careful with that. I like it because of this. I think it gives a really nice, soft sort of look to it. But I'm literally just going over that same area and kind of blending it out, and I can get these really light values. Now I definitely want to clean this paintbrush before I try to paint with it. I really like chalk pastels because they are so soft, but you can still get some really bright colors in bright areas. You do want to be careful though. You cannot get any small details with chalk pastel. It just doesn't work. Because think about them. They're like the thickness of your finger practically. Unless you happen to get a nice little point, you can maybe do a fine thin line for a while, but then it's going to rub down. Can get very nice thick areas very quickly too. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. Thin little detail pieces don't work so well for this. But these are chalk pastels, also known as artist pastels. Fun technique or fun material to play around with and see what you got. My last little tip for you is to always have a damp paper towel or sponge, so that way you can just wipe off your fingers as you go to avoid finger spots, things like that. Great little tip for you. Have fun trying out chalk pastels.